What's up, everyone, and welcome to this week's Cybersecurity Weekly, where we review the security events that happened in the last week. As always, I have broken them down in the timeline so you can jump around as you see fit. If you find my work valuable, of course, I ask you to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
We start off with patches. Google announced Privacy Sandbox on Android to limit user data sharing and prevent the use of cross-app identifiers. The company states that the Privacy Sandbox technologies are still in development. Privacy Sandbox on Android will strengthen privacy while providing tools app developers need to support and grow their businesses. It will introduce new solutions that operate without cross-app identifiers, including advertising ID, and limit data sharing with third parties. The goals of the Privacy Sandbox are to build new technology to keep your information private, to enable publishers and developers to keep online content free, and collaborate with the industry to build new internet privacy standards. Google will continue to support existing ads platform features for at least 2 years. The IT giant is inviting developers to review the proposed solution and provide their feedback through the Android Developer Portal. VMware addressed several high-severity vulnerabilities that were demonstrated by Kunlun Lab team during China's Tianfu Cup 2021 hacking contest. The vulnerabilities impact VMware ESXi, Workstation, and Fusion. They are CVE-2021-24040, which is VMware ESXi, Workstation, and Fusion, contain a use after free vulnerability in the XHCI USB controller. A malicious actor with local administrative privileges on a virtual machine may exploit this issue to execute code as the virtual machine's VMX process running on the host. Then there's CVE-2021-22041. For VMware ESXi, Workstation, and Fusion, which contains a double fetch vulnerability in the CI USB controller. A malicious actor with local administrative privileges on a virtual machine may exploit this issue to execute code as the virtual machine's VMX process running on the host. Then, CVE 2021-22042. Again, VMware ESXi contains an unauthorized access vulnerability to VMX having access to settings D authorization tickets. A malicious actor with privileges within the VMX process only may be able to access settings D servers running as a high-privileged user. Then we have CVE 2021-22043, which is VMware ESXi that contains a TOC-TOU, a time of check, time of use vulnerability that exists in the way temporary files are handled. A malicious actor with access to settings D may exploit this issue to escalate their privileges by writing arbitrary files. VMware also reported that the white hat hackers that discovered the flaws first reported them to the Chinese government in accordance with a local law that orders researchers who discover a zero-day to share their findings with the government authorities. Taiwanese vendor QNAP extended the security update for some devices that have reached end of life years ago. The company decided to extend until October this year the security updates for some models that have reached end of life. The decision aims at giving time its users to upgrade devices. That sentence was messed up. Device models for which the company extended the end date of security updates include 64-bit models and ARM models that support NAS OS versions QTS 4.2.6, 4.3.3, 4.3.6, and 4.4.1. The company will release security updates for end-of-life models to only address high or critical security issues. End-of-life models may lack computational capabilities, be short on operational memory, be unable to receive up-to-date component drivers, or possess other technical constraints or deprecating technology, which is why they only do critical vulnerability updates. The support for end-of-life models will be limited to high or critical security vulnerabilities until the end of technical support and security updates date. NAS devices are privileged targets of cyber criminals. A couple of weeks ago, QNAP forced the firmware update for its network-attached storage devices to protect its customers against the Deadbolt ransomware. Deadbolt ransomware is targeted QNAP NAS devices worldwide. Its operators claim the availability of a zero-day exploit that allows them to encrypt the content of the infected systems. Recently, a new wave of QLocker ransomware was observed targeting QNAP NAS devices worldwide. In December 2021, experts also observed Exarakes ransomware attacks targeting QNAP network-attached storage devices. Google fixed a high-severity zero-day flaw tracked as CVE-2022-0609, actively exploited with the release of a Chrome emergency update for Windows, Mac, and Linux. This is the first Chrome zero-day fix this year by Google. The zero-day is a use-after-free issue that resides in animation. The bug was reported by Adon Weidman and Clément Lessinier of Google's Threat Analysis Group. Use after free in animation. Reported by Adam Weidman and Clément Lessinier of Google's Threat Analysis Group on CVE 2022-0210. Blah, blah, blah. Reads the security advisory published by Google. Google is aware of reports that an exploit for CVE 2022-0609 exists in the wild. The emergency patches will be rolled out in the next weeks. Users could update their browser manually by visiting the entry Chrome menu, help, about Google Chrome. Google did not disclose technical details for the CVE-2022-0609 exploit to avoid, or vulnerability, to avoid massive exploitation of the bug. The IT giant also avoided disclosing info regarding the attack in the wild exploiting the flaw. Access to bug details and links may be kept restricted until a majority of users are updated with the fix. We now move on to attacks, vulnerabilities, and updates. Hackers have stolen roughly $1.9 million from South Korean cryptocurrency platform KlaySwap after they pulled off a rare and clever BGP hijack against the server's infrastructure of one of the platform's providers. The BGP hijack, which is the equivalent of hackers hijacking internet routers to bring users on malicious sites instead of legitimate ones, hit KakaoTalk, an instant messaging platform popular in South Korea. The attack took place earlier this month, on February 3rd, lasted only for 2 hours, and KlaySwap has confirmed the incident last week and is currently issuing compensation for affected users. The incident itself is very different from how most cryptocurrency platforms are getting hacked. Most cryptocurrency heists these days happen after attackers compromise the account of an employee or compromise the platform's code to steal funds from victim accounts. The KlaySwap attack is different because it didn't target KlaySwap itself, but the server infrastructure of KakaoTalk, a service the platform was using for marketing and as a way of communicating with users during tech support operations. Planned months in advance, the attackers used an autonomous system, which is a fictitious internet entity used by companies who own their own IP address spaces, such as telecoms, data centers, hosting providers, or software companies. The purpose of an AS is to advertise internet routes to tell other ASs that what IP address spaces they own and what domains can be found hosted on their property. At a technical level, this is done via BGP, Border Gateway Protocol, routes, which ASs constantly send to each other. Asses. Using a rogue ass known as AS9457 on February 3rd, the attackers began advertising that they owned the IP addresses that served developers.kakao.com, which was part of KakaoTalk's developer infrastructure and where the company hosted its official Kakao SDK software development kit, which third-party apps would use to integrate with its services. Researchers from SentinelOne have observed the potentially destructive Iran-linked app group TunnelVision is actively exploiting the Log4j vulnerability to deploy ransomware on unpatched VMware Horizon servers. True, TunnelVision's TTPs overlap with the ones associated with Iran-linked nation-state actors Phosphorus, Charmy Kitten, and Nemesis Kitten. The TunnelVision group heavily leverages one-day vulnerabilities in its campaigns. During the time SentinelOne experts monitored the activity of the group, the state-sponsored hackers exploited several flaws, including Fortinet 40OS for CVE 2018-13379, Microsoft Exchange Proxy Shell, and recently Log4 Shell. In almost all the attacks, the threat actors deployed a tunneling tool such as Fast Reverse Proxy Client, FRPC, and P-Link wrapped in a unique fashion. The threat actors leveraged the Log4Shell issue in VMware Horizon to run PowerShell commands, sending outputs back utilizing a webhook. The attackers used PowerShell commands to download tools like ngrok and run further commands to establish reverse shells and drop a PowerShell backdoor used to gather credentials and perform lateral movements. The researcher noticed that a dropped executable contains an obfuscated version of a reverse shell which is similar to Powerless Backdoor employed by the Iranian-linked app group App35, aka Charming Kitten, Phosphorus, Newcastle, and Ajax security team, in a recent wave of attacks. Experts also reported that the threat actor utilized a GitHub repository, VMware Horizon, associated with an account named Protections20, which is owned by the nation-state actor. We track this cluster separately under the name TunnelVision. This does not imply we believe they are necessarily unrelated, only that there is at present insufficient data to treat them as identical to any of the aforementioned attributions. concludes the report that also includes indicators of compromise. Canonical's Snap software, packaging, and deployment systems are affected by multiple vulnerabilities, including a privilege escalation flaw tracked at CVE-2021-44731, CVS's score of 7.8. Snap is a software packaging and deployment system developed by Canonical for operating systems that use the Linux kernel. The packages, called snaps, and the tool for using them, snapd, work across a range of Linux distributions. The flaws have been discovered by Qualys researchers. The CVE-2021-44731 is the most severe one and is a race condition in a snap-confined setup private mount function. The snap confined is a program used internally by snapd to construct the execution environment for snap applications. An unprivileged user can trigger the flaw to gain root privileges on the affected host. Qualys experts also developed a POC exploit for this issue that allows obtaining full root privileges on default Ubuntu installations. Adobe rolled out security updates to address a critical security vulnerability tracked to CVE-2022-24086, affecting its Commerce and Magento open source products that is being actively exploited in the wild. Adobe is aware that CVE-2022-24086 has been exploited in the wild in very limited attacks targeting Adobe Commerce merchants, reads the advisory published by Adobe. The flaw is an improper input validation vulnerability that could be exploited by threat actors with administrative privileges to achieve arbitrary code execution on vulnerable systems. The CVE 2022-24086 has received a CVSS score of 9.8 out of 10. It is classified as a pre-authentication issue, which means that it could be exploited without credentials. In the previous week, researchers from cybersecurity firm Sansec uncovered a massive MagoCart campaign that already compromised more than 500 online stores running the Magento 1 e-commerce platform. An interesting characteristic of this attack, or the 1.1 attack, is the combination of SQL injection and PHP object injection to take over the Magento site. Here we go! Positive Technologies researchers have created a working POC, proof of concept exploit, for the recently patched CVE 2022-24086 vulnerability affecting its Commerce and Magento open source products. An attacker could use the exploit to achieve remote code execution from an unauthenticated user. This week, Adobe rolled out security updates to address the critical CVE 2022-24086 flaw that impacts Commerce and Magento open source products. The company added that the flaw is being actively exploited in the wild. The issue is an improper input validation vulnerability that could be exploited by threat actors with administrative privileges to achieve arbitrary code execution on vulnerable systems. The CVE 2022-24086 has received the CVSS score of 9.8 out of 10. It is classified as a pre-authentication issue, which means that it could be exploited without credentials. Experts believe that threat actors could create their own version of the CVE 2022-24086 exploit to conduct attacks in the wild, especially persistent and well-resourced attackers. While the popularity of Microsoft Teams continues to grow with roughly 270 million monthly active users, threat actors started using it as an attack vector. Starting in January 2022, security researchers from Avanan observed attackers compromising Microsoft Teams accounts, attach malicious executables to chat, and infect participants in the conversation. In the attacks observed by the experts, threat actors inserted a .exe file called user-centric into a chat in an attempt to trick participants into opening it. Upon opening the executable, the malicious code will install DLL files and create shortcut links to self-administer. Experts believe that attackers can launch the attack by compromising a partner organization and listening in on inter-organizational chats. In another attack scenario, threat actors can compromise an email address and use it to access Teams. Once an attacker obtained Microsoft 365 credentials, for example, from a previous phishing campaign or data breach, that can access Teams and other Office applications. Once the attackers have gained access to an organization, they can determine defense solutions that are installed and use the proper malware to bypass existing protections. Compounding this problem is the fact that default Teams protections are lacking, as scanning for malicious links and files is limited. Further, many email security solutions do not offer robust protection for Teams, continues the analysis. Hackers who can access Teams accounts via east-west attacks or by leveraging the credentials they harvest in other phishing attacks, have carte blanche to launch attacks against millions of unsuspecting users. Researchers also explain that in some specific contexts, users have no perception of the threat that could use Teams as a vector. Avanan experts analyzed the use of Microsoft Teams in hospitals, where the internal staff used this technology to share patient medical information, ignoring the risks associated with opening files when they come through Teams. A list of recommendations provided by Avanan implement protection that downloads all files in a sandbox and inspects them for malicious content. Deploy robust, full-suite security that secures all lines of business communication, including Teams. Encourage end users to reach out to IT when seeing an unfamiliar file. Cisco ESA products are affected by a DOS vulnerability tracked to CVE-2022-24086 that resides in the DNS-based authentication of named entities, or DANE, email verification component of Cisco Async OS software for ESA. A remote, unauthenticated attacker can trigger the flaw by sending specially crafted emails to vulnerable devices. The flaw is caused by insufficient error handling and DNS name resolution. The advisory pointed out that the continued attacks could trigger a persistent denial of service condition. This vulnerability is due to insufficient error handling and DNS name resolution by the affected software. An attacker could exploit this vulnerability by sending specially formatted email messages that are processed by an affected device. A successful exploit could allow the attacker to cause the device to become unreachable for management interfaces or to process additional email messages for a period of time until the device recovers, resulting in a denial of service condition. Read the advisory published by Cisco. Continued attacks could cause a device to become completely unavailable, resulting in a persistent denial of service condition. The issue only impacts Cisco ESA products running Async OS software with the DANE feature, which is disabled by default, enabled, and with the downstream mail service configured to send bounce messages. To determine whether DANE is configured, check the Web UI page, Mail Policies, Destination Controls, Add Destination, and verify whether the DANE support option is enabled. The company released security patches, Cisco Async OS software release 13.5.4.102, and also workarounds to address the vulnerability. In order to prevent the exploitation of this bug, customers may configure bounce messages from the Cisco ESA instead of from the downstream dependent mail servers. Kraken is a new Golang-based botnet discovered in late October 2021 by researchers from threat intelligence firm Zero Fox Intelligence. Experts pointed out that despite having the same name, this botnet should not be confused with the Kraken botnet that was spotted in 2008. The botnet appears to be under active development. It supports a broad range of backdoor capabilities, such as the ability to download and execute secondary malicious payloads and run shell commands. It currently uses the SmokeLoader loader to install other malicious payloads. Kraken attack chain initially leveraged self-extracting rare SFX files downloaded by SmokeLoader. These SFX files contain a UPX packaged version of Kraken, Redline Stealer, and another binary used to delete Kraken. New versions of Kraken are downloaded by SmokeLoader directly. The early variants of Kraken bot have been found to be based on source code available on GitHub, but at this time it is unclear if the code was uploaded by the botnet operators. Experts spotted multiple versions of the administration panel or dashboard since October 2021. The code uploaded on GitHub did include a server, but it did not have a web-based interface to manage the botnet. Kraken's authors are constantly updating their code by implementing new features. Current versions could steal a broad range of info from the infected host and target wallets from multiple platforms, including Armory, Atomic Wallet, Bytecoin, Electrum, Ethereum, Exodus, Guarda, Jaxx Liberty, and Zcash. It leverages the Redline Stealer to siphon credentials, credit card data, cookies, autocomplete information stored in browsers, cryptocurrency wallets, credentials stored in VPN clients, and FTP clients. According to the experts, the Kraken botnet is allowing operators to earn around $3,000 every month. The International Committee of the Red Cross revealed that the attack that breached its network in January was conducted by a nation-state actor that exploited a Zoho vulnerability. In January, a cyber attack on a Red Cross contractor resulted in the theft of personal data from around 515,000 highly vulnerable people seeking missing families. The attack was disclosed by the ICRC, which confirmed that the data originated from at least 60 different Red Cross and Red Crescent national societies worldwide. Stolen data includes information belonging to individuals separated from their families due to conflict, migration, and disaster, missing persons and their families, and people in detention. The contractor targeted by the attackers is an external company in Switzerland that stores data for the organization. ICRC shut down the systems and website for the Restoring Family Links program that was hit by the attackers. The attribution of the hack is based on similarities of attackers' TTPs with the ones associated with app groups and the targeted nature of the attack. The Red Cross pointed out that attackers used a code designed purely for execution on the targeted ICRC servers. Threat actors also used sophisticated obfuscation techniques to avoid detection. ICRC update speculates that attackers have a high level of skills only available to a limited number of actors. However, the organization did not attribute the attack to a specific threat actor. The attackers remained inside the Red Cross's infrastructure for 70 days before being detected. Attackers first compromised the servers of the organization on November 9th, 2021. The intruders exploited an unpatched critical vulnerability, CVE-2021-44731, in Zoho's Manage Engine Add Self-Service Plus Enterprise Password Management solution to achieve remote code execution. According to a joint alert published by the FBI, NSA, and CISA, Russian-linked threat actors conducted a cyber espionage campaign aimed at U.S. cleared defense contractors to steal sensitive information related to intelligence programs and capabilities. CDCs support contracts for the U.S. Department of Defense and intelligence community in multiple areas: command, control, communications and combat systems, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance and targeting, weapons and missile development, vehicle and aircraft design, and software development, data analytics, computers, and logistics. The campaign has been active since at least January 2020, and several U.S. cleared defense contractors were breached by nation-state actors. The attackers targeted CDCs and subcontractors of any size with varying levels of cybersecurity protocols and resources. Threat actors employed similar tactics in many attempts to compromise enterprise and cloud networks. Attackers seem to focus their efforts on attacks against organizations using Microsoft 365 environment. The actors were able to maintain persistence by using legitimate credentials and a variety of malware that was used for data exfiltration. In some cases, cyber spies have maintained persistence for at least 6 months. The San Francisco 49ers NFL team has fallen victim to a ransomware attack. The news was reported by The Record. The team disclosed the attack after the BlackByte ransomware added the team to the list of its victims on its dark web leak site. The team told The Record that it immediately launched an investigation into the attack and took steps to contain the incident with the help of a third-party cybersecurity firm. It also notified law enforcement. The company added that it has no indication that the security breach involved systems outside of its corporate network, such as those connected to ticket holders. The Record pointed out that the consequence of the ransomware attack could have been catastrophic if the team had qualified for Super Bowl due to the impact on the team's game preparations. The infamous Trickbot malware was employed in attacks against customers of 60 financial and technology companies with new anti-analysis features. The news wave of attacks aimed at cryptocurrency firms, most of them located in the U.S. Trickbot is a sophisticated, modular malware. Checkpoint researchers have observed more than 20 modules that allow operators to create a broad range of malicious activities. Now we see that the malware is very selective in how it chooses its targets. Various tricks, including anti-analysis, implemented inside the modules show the author's highly technical background and explain why Trickbot remains a very prevalent malware family, reads the analysis published by Checkpoint. Most of the infections were observed in APAC and Latin American regions. Trickbot operators have continually enhanced their tactics to avoid detection and target the largest number of banking users as possible. The variant analyzed by the experts leveraged the inject.di module to perform web injection that allows operators to steal banking and credential data. The module also implements several anti-analysis techniques such as crashing tab process to prevent the scrutiny of the source code. Another anti-analysis technique used by botnet operators prevents a researcher from sending automated requests to command and control servers to get fresh web injects. Another module analyzed by the researchers is the tab.dll module, which is used to grab the user's credentials and spread the malware via network share. Below is the procedure to grab the credentials. So it enables storing user credential info in the LSAS application. It injects the locker module into the explorer.exe application. From the infected explorer.exe forces the user to enter login credentials to the app and then locks the user session. The credentials are now stored in the LSAS app memory. It grabs the credentials from the LSAS application memory using the Mimikatz technique. The malware uses the Eternal Romance exploit to spread via the SMP version 1 network share. JFront researchers publicly disclosed details of a now patched high-severity security vulnerability, CVE-2021-44731, in Apache Cassandra database software that could be exploited by remote attackers to achieve code execution on affected installations. Apache Cassandra is an open-source, NoSQL distributed database used by thousands of companies. Cassandra offers the functionality of creating user-defined functions that allow to perform custom processing of data in the database. Admins can use Java and JavaScript to write UDFs. In JavaScript, it leverages the Nashorn engine in the Java runtime environment, which is not guaranteed to be secure when accepting untrusted code. JFrog researchers have discovered that when the configuration for user-defined functions are enabled, threat actors could leverage the Nashorn engine to escape the sandbox and achieve remote code execution. Cassandra's development team decided to implement a custom sandbox around the UDF execution, which uses two mechanisms to restrict the UDF code, states the report. Experts noticed that the exploitation is possible when the Cassandra YAML configuration file contains the following definitions: enable user-defined functions, set to true; enable scripted user-defined functions, set to true; enable user-defined function threads, set to false. When the option is set to false, all invoked UDF functions run in the Cassandra daemon thread, which has a security manager with some permissions. We'll show how to abuse these permissions to achieve sandbox escape in RCE, continues the analysis. Experts shared a proof of concept to create a new file named hacked on the Cassandra server. Apache released versions 3.0.26, 3.11.12, and 4.0.2 to address the vulnerability. It adds a new flag, allow extra insecure UDFs, that's set to false by default. It prevents turning off the security manager and blocks access to Java language system. The Ministry of Defense and Armed Forces of Ukraine and state-owned banks, Private Bank, Ukraine's largest bank, and Oshad Bank, were hit by distributed denial-of-service attacks. The website of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense has been taken down by the wave of DDoS attacks, while the website of the Oshad Bank initially remained accessible. The customers were not able to access their online banking accounts. At the time of this writing, the website of the financial institution is not reachable. Threat actors also hit Private Bank and defaced its website. Threat actors added the following message: "Busted, Private Bank, WAF is watching you." The Ukrainian Center for Strategic Communications and Information Security also published a post on Facebook explaining that clients of the Privat Bank were not able to perform payments. However, threat actors did not steal funds from their bank accounts. Yesterday, the Security Service of Ukraine today revealed the country is the target of an ongoing wave by hybrid warfare conducted by Russian-linked malicious actors. Threat actors aim at destabilizing the social context in the country and instilling fear and untrust in the country's government. The SSU said the campaign is linked to Russian intelligence agencies that are spreading disinformation through social networks and other media. The Black Cat ransomware group, aka Alpha, has claimed responsibility for the cyber attack on Swissport that impacted its operations, causing flight delays. Swissport International Limited is an aviation services company providing airport ground, lounge hospitality, and cargo handling services owned by an international group of investors. The company handles around 282 million passengers and 4.8 million tons of cargo annually on behalf of some 850 client companies in the aviation sector. With a workforce of around 66,000 personnel, Swissport is active at 307 locations in 50 countries and generates consolidated operating revenue of 2.8 billion euro. Swissport International was hit by a ransomware attack that had a severe impact on its operation, causing flights to suffer delays. According to the German website Spiegel, the ransomware attack impacted a limited part of the company's global IT infrastructure. A company spokesman confirmed that the security breach took place on Thursday morning at 6 a.m. Black Hat ransomware operators leaked a sample of data allegedly stolen during the ransomware attack, claiming to have stolen 1.6 terabytes of data that are available for sale. Leaked data include business documents, tax declarations, images of passports, and ID cards of individuals. Leaked data also includes personal information of job candidates, including name, passport number, nationality, religion, email, phone number, job role, interview scores, and more. Black Cat is a very sophisticated ransomware group that has been active after Black Matter shut down its operations due to the pressure from law enforcement. Some members of the Black Cat ransomware gang are former members of the Black Matter Darkside ransomware group. Lovens boasts that its teledildonic sex toys will spice up your sexual relationship. By using wireless remote control, you can customize vibrations and adjust them to your body, or give pleasure to someone across a room or even miles away. Remote control sex toys have been around since 2010. Back then, as smartphones were not as popular, these toys were controlled by Skype. With the arrival of Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, the remote sex toy market grew significantly. These days, they are controlled by apps on our phones, with IP, WebRTC, and Bluetooth protocols used to transmit data. Hong Kong-based Lovens is one of the biggest brands that makes remote sex toys, so the Cyber News team decided to test its devices and interfaces to check how secure they are. Researchers found some worrying security practices, including a lack of obfuscation, a dependence on third-party frameworks and application programming interfaces to deliver cross-platform apps, a high number of public exploits surrounding the Bluetooth protocol, a few probable denial-of-service cases, and several access points which according to the Cyber News team, should not be accessed. In 2017, Lovent's customers complained that the app recorded users' remote sex sessions. The company admitted there was a minor bug that affected Android users, but insisted no data was sent to the company's servers and that the recording existed only for a short period of time. The company said it updates its software to address any concerns that arise and is committed to the privacy and security of its users. To carry out this investigation, the Cyber News team used one of the most comprehensive mobile app security assessment frameworks on the market, the mobile security framework MobSF, to analyze the code of the Lovent's remote Android app. MobSF is an interface for a set of tools used by security researchers to perform static and dynamic analysis of Android apps. MobSF gave a below-average security score, 19 out of 100, as it detected 3 trackers in the Lovent's remote Android app. Note that the lower score is because of the many permissions that the app legitimately needs to function. It also detected Janus vulnerability on old Android devices, versions 5.1.1, 6.0, 6.0.1, 7.0, 7.1.1, 7.1.2, and 8.0. 10 dangerous permissions and insecure configurations that permitted clear text or unencrypted traffic to all domains. The U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation published a joint cybersecurity advisory with the U.S. Secret Services, which revealed that the BlackByte ransomware group has breached at least 3 organizations from U.S. critical infrastructure sectors in the last 3 months. The BlackByte ransomware operation has been active since September 2021. In October 2021, researchers from TrustWave's Spider Labs released a decryptor that can allow victims of early versions of BlackByte ransomware to restore their files for free. Government experts reported that the gang exploited a known Microsoft Exchange server vulnerability to gain access to some victims' networks. Once access is gained to the network, threat actors deployed tools to perform lateral movements and escalate privileges before exfiltrating and encrypting files. The advisory includes indicators of compromise for the BlackByte ransomware operation that could allow defenders to detect the threat. The report includes MD5 hashes of suspicious ASPX files discovered on compromised Microsoft Internet Information Services servers, and a list of commands used by ransomware operators observed by the researchers. Recently, the San Francisco 49ers NFL team has fallen victim to a BlackByte ransomware attack. The news was reported by The Record. The team disclosed the attack after that. The ransomware gang added the team to the list of its victims on its dark web leak site. We now move on to other security news. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency announced this week that it has compiled a list of free cybersecurity tools and services that can help organizations reduce cybersecurity risk and increase resilience. The list is part of an ongoing project. It'll be continuously updated by CISA that also plans to allow third parties to propose their resources to include in the list. The list includes open source tools and free resources provided by government organizations and private cybersecurity firms. The tools cover a broad range of activities normally conducted by defenders, from incident response to threat detection. The U.S. agency proposed the following categorization according to the 4 goals outlined in CISA Insights. Implement cybersecurity measures now to protect against critical threats, reducing the likelihood of a damaging cyber incident, detecting malicious activity quickly, responding effectively and confirm incidents, and maximizing resilience. The list already includes cybersecurity tools and services from major IT and cybersecurity firms, including ones provided by CISA, AT&T Cybersecurity, Cloudflare, Cisco, Center for Internet Security, CrowdStrike, Google, IBM, Microsoft, Mandiant, Splunk, SANS, SecureWorks, Tenable, and Palo Alto Networks. The list also includes tens of tools that are open source. The White House has linked the recent distributed denial of service attacks that took offline the sites of banks and defense agencies of the Ukraine to Russia's main Directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, aka GRU. This week, the Ministry of Defense and the Armed Forces of the Ukraine and state-owned banks, Privat Bank, Ukraine's largest bank, and Oshad Bank, were hit by distributed denial of service attacks. The website of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense has been taken down by the wave of DDoS attacks. The U.S. government believes that Russian cyber actors likely have targeted the Ukrainian government, including military and critical infrastructure networks, to collect intelligence and pre-position to conduct disruptive cyber activities, said Ann Neuberger, the Biden administration's Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber and Emerging Technologies. We have technical information that links the Russian Main Intelligence Directorate, or GRU, as known GRU infrastructure, was seen transmitting high volumes of communication to Ukraine-based IP addresses and domains. Neuberger pointed out that the attacks are part of a broad strategy that aims at assisting destructive attacks in preparation for a military attack and consequent invasion. Russia likes to move in the shadows and counts on a long process of attribution. In light of that, we're moving quickly to attribute the DDoS attacks. Ukraine's SBU intelligence agency also attributed the DDoS attacks to Russia, but Moscow also denied any accusation. The Security Service of Ukraine, SSU, today revealed the country is the target of an ongoing wave of hybrid warfare conducted by Russian-linked malicious actors. Threat actors aim to destabilize the social context of the country and install fear and untrust in the country's government. The SSU said the campaign is linked to Russian intelligence agencies that are spreading misinformation through social networks and other media. The European Data Protection Supervisor, EDPS authority, this week called for a ban on the development and the use of surveillance software like the Pegasus spyware in the EU. Pegasus is a surveillance malware developed by the Israeli surveillance NSO group that could infect both iPhones and Android devices. It is sold exclusively to governments and law enforcement agencies. The abuse of this kind of solution poses a serious threat to fundamental rights, particularly on the rights to privacy and data protection. It comes from the EDPS conviction that the use of Pegasus might lead to an unprecedented level of intrusiveness which threatens the essence of the right of privacy, as the spyware is able to interfere with the most intimate aspects of our daily lives, says the European Data Protection Supervisor. Pegasus constitutes a paradigm shift in terms of access to private communications and devices, which is able to affect the very essence of our fundamental rights, in particular the right to privacy. Privacy advocated and cybersecurity experts demonstrated the use of the Pegasus in surveillance campaigns worldwide targeting journalists, political figures, dissidents, and activists. The abuse of this kind of solution poses a serious threat to the fundamental rights, particularly on the rights to privacy and data protection. The surveillance software allows to completely take over the target device and spy on the victims. Developers of surveillance solutions leverage zero-click, zero-day exploits to silently compromise devices without any user interaction. Pegasus is known to have used Kismet and forced entry exploits to infect the devices of the victims. NSO Group has repeatedly claimed that its software is sold exclusively to law enforcement and intelligence agencies to fight crime and terrorism in so-called life-saving missions. According to a series of disclosures, though, by the business publication Calcalist in recent weeks, dozens of citizens in the country were targeted by Israeli police with the NSO Group's spyware to gather intelligence without a search warrant authorizing the surveillance. U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency added 9 new vulnerabilities to its Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog, including 2 recently patched zero-day issues affecting Adobe Commerce, Magento, Open Source, and Google Chrome. CISA orders all federal civilian executive branch agencies to address both security vulnerabilities by March 1st, 2022. The Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog is a list of known vulnerabilities that threat actors have abused in attacks and that are required to be addressed by federal civilian executive branch agencies. According to Binding Operational Directive BOD 22-01, reducing the significant risk of known exploited vulnerabilities, FCEB agencies have to address the identified vulnerabilities by the due date to protect their networks against attacks exploiting the flaws in the catalog. Experts recommend this. Also, private organizations review the Known Exploitable Vulnerabilities Catalog and address the vulnerabilities in the infrastructure. The added ones are Adobe Commerce and Magento Open Source Improper Input Validation Vulnerability, Google Chrome Use After Free Vulnerability, Microsoft Internet Explorer Type Confusion Vulnerability, Microsoft Windows VBScript Engine Out of Bounds Right Vulnerability, WinRAR Absolute Path Traversal Vulnerability, Adobe Flash Player Use After Free Vulnerability, PHP Unit Command Injection Vulnerability, Microsoft Word Memory Corruption Vulnerability, Microsoft Graphics Component Memory Corruption Vulnerability. This week, Adobe rolled out security updates to address the critical severe security vulnerability tracked to CVE-2022-24086, affecting its Commerce and Magento open source products that is being actively exploited in the wild. Adobe is aware that CVE-2022-24086 has been exploited in the wild in very limited attacks targeting Adobe Commerce merchants. The flaw is an improper input invalidation vulnerability that could be exploited by threat actors with administrative privileges to achieve arbitrary code execution on vulnerable systems. The CVE-2022-24086 has received a CVSS score of 9.8 out of 10. It is classified as a pre-authentication issue, which means that it could be exploited without credentials. CISA also added CVE-2022-20609 to the catalog. It is a Chrome high-severity zero-day flaw fixed by Google this week, which is actively exploited. Google released a Chrome emergency update for Windows, Mac, and Linux. This is the first Chrome zero-day fix this year by Google. The zero-day is use after free issue that resides in animation. The bug was reported by Adam Weidman and Clément Lassane of Google's threat analysis group. Last week, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency added 15 more flaws to the Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog. The European Central Bank is warning banks of possible Russia-linked cyber attacks amid the rising crisis with Ukraine and is inviting them to step up defenses. Inviting them? Really? The European Central Bank is telling Eurozone banks to step up their defenses against cyber attacks. First you're inviting me, now you're telling me. Also in the context of geopolitical tensions such as the standoff between Russia and Ukraine, the ECB's top supervisor said on Thursday. ECB warned that the rising risk from cyber attacks began in 2020. The European Central Bank remarks on the importance of training the staff on cyber threats. The central bank has also been running specific cyber drills to simulate cyber attacks against their infrastructure. With that, I say thanks again for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe if you haven't already, and smash the bell if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Don't forget to ride. Farewell.